All right, just about 8 minutes past 7, and that conversation we've been waiting for. Sophia Nuna and Mheshimiwa Richard Onyonka, karibu sana to our studio.
Thank you very much.
Yes. So there are many questions, but I hope
Do you have
Sophia,
a question?
Yes. Have you left ODM? Shooting from the hip, straight from the hip.
Actually, no, I haven't left. We're just having a different opinion about the direction of where the party is going.
All right. I'm sure there are many questions.
Which we shall follow up to that, and whether there's an intention to leave, or maybe he'll be kicked out.
Well, yes, there are possibilities.
All possibilities.
Yeah, you leave or you can kick out.
We will look at all of those. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa, for joining us this morning. Richard Onyonka, who is Kitutu Chache South Member of Parliament, with us today. And let's begin with what has been the biggest story now dominating news headlines, referendum, the push by code on the same. And you're among those, the few, in code that are saying referendum is not what we should be talking about now. Why?
Well, I think to a large extent it's because of the maybe to begin with, I think the style and even the content of what has been presented to us. Some of us, I mean, I'll speak for myself individually, and I'll most probably say in consultation with the people who voted for me in Kitutu Chache South. Some people feel that, one, it is too early to start politicking again, to start discussing the issues of whether we need to change the constitution or not. Some people feel that some of these issues can actually be discussed either, I mean, can be sorted out or legislated in Parliament, or through other means to achieve the same goal. And to be honest, personally, my feeling is that Kenyans, okay, the ones who voted for me, because I talk to them and they're the ones who usually will tell me what they feel. They feel fatigued. They feel tired. They feel like we again don't need to go into this issue of electioneering mode and campaigning mode, whether it's for the referendum or otherwise. Okay.
In the lead up to the Saba following the return of former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, you were also against the rallies that were being held around the country. You came out amongst others across the divide, Jubilee and Court, who said, you know what, this should stop. But the rallies continued, and Saba came, and a tsunami had been promised, to which some have, many analysts said it was an anticlimax. So all along you seem to have taken a completely different position from your party and the coalition in general.
It's true, but I was vindicated. I mean, what we were saying is, you hold the rallies, then so what? I mean, in real terms, my feeling is that the former Prime Minister came, his first rally at Uhuru Park was actually a success. I believe if there was any message that he was making or he was giving to Kenyans, or whatever message Kenyans were giving to anybody who would care to listen, I think the message was very, very clear. But my feeling was that after that, the roadmap wasn't clear as to what we were asking for, what the agenda per se was going to be, and what the objective of these rallies was. And as a result, the rallies went on for the 2 weeks.
The big rally,
they
pushing
were to hype
for national dialogue. Did you agree that was needed, national dialogue?
I think politically it's healthy for politicians to keep talking, because the reality is that whether the talks are formal or informal, politicians should always talk, because that reduces the temperatures, that you hear the other side's view and you hear the other side's opinion. And I think it was a good point raising the issues which the former Prime Minister and the court team had raised. I mean, these are legitimate and genuine issues, issues of crime, issues of harmony in the country. The issues of the country being polarized at tribal points, all right, and this is a very, very sensitive issue in Kenya, and I think these are the issues which the court team was raising. But I think those issues can be raised at other quarters. Those issues can actually be articulated here. They can be articulated in the print media, and CORD can hold sensitization meetings and conferences, and then they can even seek an appointment with the president and discuss with him and ask him why certain things are being done in a certain way. And most likely, I think it would make sense if they heard what the president would say. Okay. But coming out and saying that the best thing you're going to do in the country is to come out and hold rallies, and then the rallies are going to achieve results, I think. So
what do you think then is fueling this? Because the president had said, you know what, State House is open for a cup of tea, whoever wants to come. Of course, that was rejected by court. They said the only way is national dialogue, formally as they've called for it. It did not happen, and now we're talking about a referendum. So you said the issues they raise are legit, but it's the manner in which they're going about it. So why do you think they're going about it in that way?
I wish I knew. I would be a very rich guy today. I think...
Do you think there's an ulterior motive? Because we have had, you know, talk of overturning the government, taking over, and, you know...
There are two sides. There are two sides to this story. I think one side is the court side, which says legitimately we are just presenting our issues, which we think the government needs to look at, and because we are Kenyans and we demand that the president really looks at these issues, because one, it is constitutional, number two, it is the right thing to do. You have the other side which feels that court wants to get power through the back door. Court wants to, because we lost the elections in the 2012 elections, and therefore 13, and therefore according to for example, the Jubilee side, they feel that there is no need for the president to speak to the former prime minister, who, according to some of the guys in Jubilee, they feel he's just an ordinary Kenyan. And yet some people in court feel that the former prime minister, the former vice president, and Honorable Moses Wetangula are senior members of the Kenyan political establishment, and they hold a huge chunk of Kenyans in terms of numbers of voters, and therefore the president should speak to them. So you have that issue bringing friction and creating distrust and creating all this noise. Okay, I want to welcome our viewers as you watch this morning. Get part of this, get involved, call us, talk to us about what your thoughts are as you talk to Mheshimiwa here. You talked about them exploring other avenues, which we've also had. The Jubilee members have said, yes, there's Parliament and the other constitutionally set up avenues and platforms that these issues they're raising could be discussed. But let's talk about Parliament. The numbers are against them. No matter what happens, court will ultimately be defeated. Jubilee has the muscle. So what other way then do they pursue? That issue has been raised, but let me just use a simple example for you to understand what I'm saying, that we have other avenues. Number one, for example, I'm in the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee sits. We have both Jubilee and court members in the committee. The margins, the differences in margins in terms of when we vote, and most of the time when we discuss anything budgetary, we go for consensus. If you remember last year's budget, the dispute that was there, I can give you a simple example, where the judiciary wanted to buy aeroplanes to try and transport the judges to the far-flung areas of the country. But in the Budget Committee, we sat and said, we think this is a stupid idea. I mean, you are going to hire aeroplanes, then these judges are going to fly there and fly out, and yet for the country to look like we are united and we're working together, I think that a judge should move to, if it's in Turkana West, let him move there, settle there, so that his presence is felt, that actually the Kenyan government is directly trying to solve the issues that are affecting Kenyans. So we voted against that. Now, my position is, in the Budget Committee is where we discuss matters pertaining to revenue allocation. Other than the Commission of Revenue Allocation, this is debated, it is discussed, and it is brought forth, and we debate and agree. Now, if court is coming up with the argument that we need a referendum for the government to increase the revenue that is going to the county government, but in the Budget Committee, or where we sit as ODM and as court members, we were never asked, what have you discussed in the Budget Committee? What are the reasons why the government is not actually allocating the money? And one of the reasons why in the last financial year the president did not give all the money that the revenue allocation and even the governors were asking for is because the Auditor General had said we don't have the structure structures, we don't have the capacity. This money that you're going to give to these governors is actually going into waste. Already the central government exists. You can leave some of this money. The central government, the structures are already in place, and we have no problem with that. So what you do, let us give it time so that in the next 1 or 2 years, then the government can systematically begin to increase the revenue.
Right.
Which for me makes sense. And you've seen what has happened. I mean, members of the county assembly are flying all over the world, going to look at things which don't exist. You have a lot of money being misappropriated. You have all these issues coming up. Those are the structures which are lacking. And it's not that MCAs are any different than MPs. If you don't have structures that control how government revenue is going to be utilized and used, you will misuse money. It is commonsensical. That's what happens with politicians and people like that. So for anybody to begin to say that you need a referendum, therefore, to now force the government to increase the revenue up to 50%, one, doesn't make sense. Number two, why doesn't it make sense? The amount of revenue that the Kenyan government had because of the wage bill, the only revenue we are using right now for most of it is going to recurrent expenditure. The money that is left over for development is so small. Now, if you're going to take this money and hand it over to the county governments, basically Kenya is going to become a bankrupt country. These are things that can be debated, can be discussed at Parliament. We can discuss them at committee level. CORD and ODM members of Parliament are there, and you see the results. The president this year has increased the money. Yes, we have. And I know that next year he's going to increase the money. I do not believe that inherently the thinking when we are in Parliament and when we talk with our Jubilee colleagues, I do not believe that the agenda is actually to destroy devolution. Devolution has already gone. I mean, nobody's going to stop it. You can't even touch it now because Kenyans have realized that funds have been devolved from the center to the periphery and the impact is obvious. So for me, the reason why we are arguing with our teams in CORD is what we are saying is this: can't we give this administration some time, even when we may disagree with many other issues, but there's some very obvious things that we need to give them time on so that they can even implement 1 or 2 of what they are saying. Then if that fails, then we can come up and say, you see, they have completely failed.
It's interesting that you say that because one of the biggest issues that CORD has is the question of devolution and funding it. And you've talked about the increase which we saw yesterday with the president signing the act. We now have 43%, the bill, 43% of money going to the counties.
That is true.
But audited accounts. But this is of 2009, 2010 audited accounts. That has been the big debate that CORD has said, they're lying to you because at the end of the day, these audited accounts are way, 4, 5 years back about. But then again, the work goes back to Parliament.
No, then do you blame the president for using audited accounts of 2012? No, it's actually 12, 13 and not the current ones. The reality is our budgetary system works in such a way that we are always a year behind. So until you give the Auditor General the structures, and he has asked for personnel, he has asked for money. In fact, the last budget, the Auditor General was asking something like 8 billion, and we gave him, I think, 2.2. And the reason for him getting less money was not because Parliament didn't want to give him more money. It's because actually there is no money. So logically, either the funds have to come from somewhere, then fast track the process of auditing the books to the current level. In fact, we are doing so well because previously audited accounts would be 7 years behind, 6 years behind. And that's why you would realize that if there was an audit query, some people would be taken to court maybe 3 years after or 2 years after because the audited accounts came later. What we are saying is, but that is not the president's problem. That is actually a problem with the Auditor General's office, who has sought for resources from the Exchequer. The Exchequer is saying Parliament should allocate the money, and when we sat in Parliament, and we are there, we're about 43 individuals in the Budget Committee. Out of that number, I think half of the team is actually coded. And the issues which were raised of the money not being there are genuine issues. This is not a utopian thought or something that came from nowhere, whereby we are saying, oh, the government now, Uhuru has said there's no money. No, there is no money. So what we are saying is, unless we get money from somewhere, either the government increases revenue collection and a certain amount of money is raised so that specifically the Auditor General's office is funded so that they're able to be up to date in terms of their budget, in terms of their auditing, so that by next year, then you can say the revenue that we have collectible, which has been audited, is this much, and therefore 43% of this is what we are going to give.
Yeah, and also the PSC is the one which presents this to Parliament for debate, because Parliament again is also now on the other hand being accused of undermining that fiscal devolution, if you like, that everybody is now blaming the president and the government for. So then why is it what you're saying now isn't Jubilee able to say, so that they can paint the picture as is, and then not let court run away with this narrative?
I think there are on both sides. There are things which Jubilees are not able to say, and there are things which court sometimes is not able to say. I think the clarity, how do I put it? The clarity of this issue has not been brought forth because, for example, I think you asked the question, but how many times do you find members of the Jubilee coalition who are in the budget committee, or for example Reverend Mutava Musimi, if you asked him the question, he would actually tell you, because we have discussed it in the budget committee, and we asked the question. We said, this figure that we are talking about, is it actually a real figure, or is it true like some of the people in the country, and not necessarily the court side which is raising these issues? Even members of Jubilee want more money to be given to their counties.
Yeah, and that is the concern with the Jubilee members, because they feel that now this court push will gain momentum even with their own, because every governor wants more money to their people at the county level.
That is true. But again, the other issue that for me I'm handling is this, one of the issues that I've been thinking about, and I think that Kenyans need to know, is very simple. You say you want the president to increase the money to 50%, for example.
Yes.
Already the president is at 43%.
43%, yes.
Let's make an assumption that the call for referendum is going to take preparation, collection of signatures first, preparation by the IEBC, go through the processes through Parliament, take it back. It's going to take another 3 years, for example. What happens if President Uhuru next year decides to increase that money to 50%?
So already you
would have dismantled the argument for need and for seeking the referendum.
Yeah.
And you can't then argue that what if the president goes back and gives less money? The reality is that once you've increased progressively the funds which are available for development and whatnot, you cannot therefore turn back and give less.
Court's argument is that it needs to be in law, because right now in law it's 15%.
It's already in law.
They want it to stand at 50%, that threshold, because they say, yes, he's moved, but they could use different arguments to say, you know what, we cannot sustain this. We have to cut back. So they say their push for that is to ensure that it's no longer 15%, the minimum that goes to the counties, it's at half.
It's already in law. It says the amount of money that is going to be devolved cannot be less than the 15%. That is constitutional.
Yeah.
If you want to increase that money to a certain amount, why don't you wait for the coming elections and put it in your manifesto and run with it for the coming elections and defeat Uhuru?
You could be the Jubilee spokesperson right now.
Not really. I just think we have to be reasonable. You know, in Kenya, the problem is sometimes our politics doesn't want people who are reasonable. I just think this is so reasonable.
Okay.
Uhuru has been president for 1, maybe 2 years. I have so many things I can criticize Uhuru over. I could run through a list of 60 of them. But for crying out loud, you don't take a matter like this and try and give it the political twitch to it for the simple reason that you think you get political mileage of it. My argument is, take it to your manifesto and run with it in 2017. Another
issue, before we leave the referendum question, is of course IEBC.
Yes.
And yesterday the committee of experts that was set up by CORD met the IEBC, which was interesting because that is one of the big issues they have. They want them disbanded. Do you think that's the way we need to go? Are you unhappy and satisfied with how IEBC conducted itself last year?
And let me tell you, IEBC, there were issues that came out of the past elections. For me, issues that were extremely embarrassing. You saw those kits not working. Kenyans were expecting to go to the polling stations and find those machines are working. The results were supposed to be tabulated instantly. You would have the results coming in, all right? But at the same time, again, IEBC did not come from heaven. this is an institution that was created here, which had members both which were coming from either side, the coded side and which was coming from the Jubilee side. Then we had issues. There are people who say the elections were not free and fair. There are people who say former Prime Minister lost the elections unfairly. In fact, some people were even saying now we should have even prayed harder so that the 50+1 issue, the Supreme Court should not even have allowed Uhuru to continue being president. We should have gone for a runoff. My argument is very simple. The IEBC is the one which made me an MP. Now, if you want to disband the IEBC... Well,
they didn't quite make you MP.
They legitimized the exercise of me being elected. They did that to so many other members of parliament. They did that to senators. They did that. So there were some elections which were given legitimacy. There were elections, election results which were accepted without any question, where actually the IEBC did well. Then there's the election, especially the presidential one, where the IEBC bungled up big time. You notice they have got a case now, which of course the members of the IEBC who have been taken to court are still innocent until proven guilty. But the reality is there were issues.
Yes.
Now, to me, if you say that one of the conditions you want to give is that you actually would like the IEBC to be disbanded, then the question I ask you is, what is the process that it takes for the IEBC to be disbanded?
Yes.
One, you have then to bring either they have to be investigated. Parliament has to come up, for example, with a resolution, which then will be accepted that, yeah, we're going to disband it. And then after that, when we sit in Parliament, then...
And so the petition failed yesterday by the activists.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
then now you have to discuss and debate how are you going to bring in the commissioners. And then we go back to the same issue of tyranny of numbers. When the commissioners are going to be vetted, like yesterday, the commission which was set up on the one which Kibunja was previously NCIC. If you look at it, yes, there was a give and take, and there was acceptance that the commissioners which were being appointed, it was done fairly and reasonably. But I can tell you the truth that many of the members of that commission are actually Jubilee. So even the chairman is Kabaro is a Jubilee fella.
So what you're saying is the push by code to get IEBC disbanded is purely to settle a score because of losing the presidential election last year?
No, I'm saying that it is purely a request whereby CORD feels that the IEBC did not perform to the expectations of Kenyans, but many of us again are arguing that you really don't have to disband the IEBC to change it, that you can actually have the IEBC, we can have a discussion and agreement within Parliament, for example, where we can come in and look at where the weaknesses were, and we can bring a bill and we can change the issues which led to the bungling up of that election, and we can move on without necessarily taking this to the referendum. Now, you want to go and hold a referendum, but you're asking the same IEBC to give you an okay that they're going to come in and actually approve of those signatures that you're bringing. I mean, let's be serious. Do you want to fire me from my job? And then you are now turning around and telling me, but I'll give you these signatures, which then you have to verify, and then after that I fire you from your job.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. I mean, why are you cheating yourself?
The idea that if the referendum were to take off and be conducted, that a UN put together body would run it. What do you think about that? Because eventually then they do not want IEBC, that you cannot be a judge in your own case. According
to me, what does the Constitution say? Who is supposed to conduct elections in Kenya?
IEBC.
Absolutely. So you tell me you're going to bring guys from the UN to come and run the exercise for you? Again, as far as I'm concerned, and I've worked in foreign affairs, that is most probably going to be a tough order. Because the Kenyan government will go to the UN and tell the UN, we have the structures, we have the mechanisms, we have an independent electoral boundaries commission, which was part of the issues of Agenda 4 items from the negotiated settlement of the coalition government, and these IEBC in fact did a reasonably good job. Why are you coming in to interfere in our internal affairs of running our country?
Do you feel this was well thought out in as far as where we are now at the political landscape? calling for a referendum, having the COE to come up with the questions for the referendum. Do you feel it is something that is being developed something that is being, you know, set up as the developments go by, or it's something that was thought out very well from the very beginning?
I think this is a development that took place because there wasn't any other option available. As far as I'm concerned, this whole process, of course, everything in Kenya seems to be political. My argument is that we can achieve the same results to change the outstanding and the critical issues of this country without necessarily politicizing the whole process and the whole exercise effectively. The people, for example, who are working at the IEBC, I can tell you, many people have said there was a fair distribution and a reasonable distribution as to who the commissioners were in this IEBC the way it is. If you go to the judges, especially in the Supreme Court, many people believed that the Supreme Court judges would have ruled in favor of former Prime Minister Raila in the case against Uhuru for the presidential election results, because many of those judges were actually friends, and even the former Prime Minister recommended their names for them to go to the Supreme Court. But sometimes when these people reach there, circumstances change. So how many times are you going to be bringing IEBC members who then, for example, if they bungle up an election and it happens, I mean, look at ODM elections.
And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
before
and
we
then
go
look at the elections are ODM are bungled. So do we then come up and say, now, you see what we, in fact, let's begin by dismantling ODM?
All right, let's talk to our viewers who are calling us this morning, the one to contribute. Mohammed from Isiolo, good morning.
Morning, Safia Wanuna. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for calling.
Yes, morning, Mr. Richard Onyonka.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
The son of the former the late Zachary Onyonka.
Thank you, sir.
And respect to your father.
Thank you very much.
One thing I want to ask you is that I know when you are politicians, you go to parliament to go and maybe you have to differ politically. But at the end of the day, what is important is that you have to work for the people who elected you, not necessarily from your constituency, but the whole Kenyans, because as a National Assembly, you represent all. Right now, we've got that money which is going to the counties, and we accept the devolved government. But the figures that we are using, that 43% is for 2009 to 2010, which is 580 million. Which was the budget. I want you as an MP to fast track so that we use 2012-2013, which was around 1.2 trillion, so that if you devolve 30%, it is going to be almost 400 or 500 billion for that case. That one is one. Two, as a son of an economist, I would like you to come with ideas such that what we are seeing in the counties is we should not devolve corruption to the counties. To counter-check that, not necessarily the MCAs, but put in place the efficiency monitoring unit, which is in the office of the president, but you give it more powers so that in every county such efficiency monitoring units are there, which is an independent body and will be answerable directly to the director who is going to report to the parliament for efficiency and monitoring of the funds which are coming to the county. Because at the end of the day, we might be devolving the functions and the resources, but they may end up into very few people's pockets. And my third appeal for you is that regardless of the political divide you are coming from, you are a young fellow. Reason, when you come and debate based on your conscience. You should not base on stomach and the rest. I'm sorry for that. But please ensure that you are the eyes of this country. Let us make Kenya a better place to live. Especially as people from Northeastern and this marginalized area, we are looking forward for parliament, regardless of where you are coming from, to take our mandate, please.
All right,
Thank
Mohammed.
you very much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for your contribution and for watching this morning. Do we still have Austin? Austin?
Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, go ahead with your contribution.
Morning, Boshwell.
Morning, Musalimiwa.
Good morning.
I'm noting them down for you, don't worry.
Yes, Moshibiwa, I think you're doing a very great job. Because according to me, I don't think this is the right time for court to call on these many animosity in the country. It's high time for the government to create easy avenues for youths to come up with the companies. I mean, even in Kenya, it goes up to 90 days for someone to apply for a company. So I think courts should change their strategy and come up on ways of streamlining some of the government's moves on some issues. But that's it. I think they should change their plan. It's not time for referendum rallies all over the country. We have so many things going on in the country. Insecurity, unemployment, tribalism, nepotism. These are the things that we are supposed to deal with. And the issue of devolution, this is a baby that has just been born, and we are supposed to give him time to grow. That's my contribution. Thank you so much.
Very much, Austin, for that, and we appreciate you watching and calling in this morning. And also Mohammed, earlier Austin saying there that it is not time for a referendum, echoing your sentiments. Let's talk about what Mohammed had to say. He's touched on what we discussed earlier, yes, on MP's push for fast-tracking the auditing accounts for them to be debated so that we have fresher ones. I don't know if you have a comment on that. He's saying as an MP you should perhaps be very vocal.
Thank you. I think to a large extent, what Ahmed is saying is what some of us who are maybe few from the coded side who have been saying exactly the same thing he's saying. We need to start raising the very critical issues in Parliament on where things are going wrong without looking as if we are bitter and without looking as if we are disinterested, or we actually, our agenda is to not even give the Jubilee coalition time to make their mistakes legitimately or to rule this country for the next 4 years or whatever time it's going to take. Number two, if Parliament wanted, and especially if members of the court coalition can come to the House and even pass a bill whereby we are demanding that we want the audited accounts to be fast-tracked, to be up to date today, it can be done. All right? So as far as I'm concerned, it is true. We are not concentrating on the legitimate issues which are affecting the country or which are being raised by court itself. All right? And that is why I'm saying this. Even when I don't want to sound like I'm a spokesman for Jubilee, you cannot blame that particular aspect of lack of a structure that is supposed to manage the audited accounts for the country on Uhuru Kenyatta's government. He found it. It is a carry-on that he has carried with himself. We are now 2 years behind. We can fast-track this coming year so that by next year you can find that we have actually sorted out the issue. Point number two. Ahmed raised the issue of, he thinks it is important that we have an efficiency monitoring unit that is going to be going to the county government to monitor the money. Yes, it makes sense for you to set up efficiency monitoring units, but the truth and the reality is, it is important to set up the other structures. If you listen and if you read what the Auditor General's report has been saying for the last 2 years, he says, for example, if you take Kisii County, the auditors that come to audit the books in Kisii on the county government funding come from Kisumu, and they come on I think a period of every 3 months. Now, a period of 3 months is a long period of time. If anything was going wrong, it would have gone wrong. So what the Auditor General was saying, he needs to have teams which are stationed in all the counties, which are known, and then you bring in Kenya Anti-Corruption, then you bring in the DPP's office to be set up, which is funded, which have got people investigating these issues, so that these offices act as deterrent from the officers, from the politicians and all these people who are running the Kenyan government, whether it's from the central government, county government, and even all the way down, so that people can begin to be accountable and people can be accepting the reality that there are certain things you can do and there are certain things you can't do. I think the last point that Ahmed said is that there's a need, and I didn't quite understand what his question was. He says that there's a need for people to debate without feeling and looking at what you're being given for your stomach. I think to a large extent, I can tell Ahmed that, of course, the reason why I think he brought that issue is because some people, when they see me raising these issues and saying, I think CORD is going the wrong way, some people have said, oh, you know, Onyonka's now been given money by Jubilee so that he can fight CORD. And let me tell you, the day Uhuru gives me money, it will be seen, because I don't have any right now. But if he gives me the money, I'll most probably take it, and I'll still tell him what is wrong with his government. So both ways, I am safe.
You are safe.
And this is why my argument has been that the reason why some of us, a few of us in CORD, have come out publicly to say this is because I think we need to be courageous enough as Kenyans to be able to tell each other what we feel is true without necessarily being negative about it.
Okay.
Yes.
The popular initiative is the way CORD is going because of the disadvantage of the numbers in Parliament, both houses. Yes. Do you think it will work? They're embarking on collecting the signatures. How do you think that will unfold?
I think CORD will get the signatures. Well, I hear the former Prime Minister and the CORD team have said they want to raise 5 million. They could most probably get even 6 million if that's what they wanted.
Yes.
But I can tell you this. If you look at 2005, when we had the Kilifi draft, I was campaigning in my village areas against that draft because I felt that it had left out certain aspects which are very critical, especially on issues of devolution. Come 2005, the new constitution comes in. 2010, Kilifi, we were saying no. This one, we were saying yes, for the constitution to be promulgated by President Kibaki, because we really, really needed this. I personally believed that the problems in Africa have always been centered on the big man syndrome, whereby all resources are centered around one individual who then decides to share the cake as he may so wish. By us bringing in devolution and the money going to the periphery, we have moved a big step. My argument is, I think depending on what the president does in terms of either sorting out and raising the issues which are outstanding, then if the president is intransigent, or President Uhuru doesn't, if he decides not to, for example, as I said, if by next year the president said the money has now moved from 43% and we're going to be at 50%, which is possible, then I think the referendum would not have any impact.
Okay.
But if he does the opposite, if he doesn't tackle any of the issues which are being raised by the CORD side, and there are about 2 or 3 of them, it doesn't touch them, then the referendum would most probably have its own fate. But I still believe it will be defeated.
It will be defeated. The Kihara Member of Parliament, Irungu Kangata, is suggesting and proposing that whoever is pushing for a referendum should finance it. Do you think CORD should finance this?
No, I don't think that the elections, that holding a referendum was tailor-made specifically for CORD or for anybody else. A referendum, for example, if you look at what happens in countries like the US or Europe, you'll find that a group of individuals could come in and discuss a simple issue like right to life. There are people who will come. A church can decide, or Christians can decide to say, we would like to bring in a clause which says we must have right to life and there will never be an abortion and it should never take place, and we are saying it's illegal and blah, 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 blah. Now, if you have these few individuals who are bringing such a sensitive and such a critical issue for debate nationally, if you tell them to raise 8 billion for them to bring that referendum to the Kenyan public, then you are defeating the whole purpose and agenda of actually bringing forth referendums or wanting to change anything within the constitution. Now, my argument is what Kangatha has done, that's his opinion, but I think it would actually be ruled unconstitutional even if it was taken to court.
Okay.
Yeah.
The question of security is also a big one.
Yes.
But some have asked and wondered how a referendum would sort out that question. It is a big problem the government led by Jubilee is grappling with.
Yes.
But also when you look at the wider issues in the police service,
yes,
it is not problems that began after the 2013 elections. The deeper problems began way back. What, in your opinion, is the solution to this? Because it's one of the key issues that CORD is rising up to speak against.
Thank you. I believe that what CORD is raising is a legitimate issue, but it cannot be an issue that you can legislate on. All right? The issue of crime that has run amok in the country, the issue of terrorists or individuals coming in and killing individuals within our borders is a matter that is structural based. I know that our side has been raising issues against the president, against Jubilee government, for example, from the point of view that we feel there needs to be a very clear message from the president in terms of what the responsibilities of the police commission are going to be, what the responsibilities of Kimayo should be, what are the in other words, is the police service being run professionally and adequately enough for them to be able to face the challenges of fighting the crime? And one of the issues that has been discussed amongst us even in Parliament is that we need a police service that is detribalized, that we need to see when recruitment is being done, it should be done professionally, not the nonsense that was being done the other day where you have individuals carrying money and going to bribe people who are recruiting police officers, therefore, which means you even end up getting people who are not qualified enough to actually take over these positions. Now, you can't put that in the referendum, but you can legislate that in Parliament, that we can discuss and say we want the police service that is going to be independent, that we can legislate and say we want the powers of the Commissioner General to be very clear and to be very succinct, that we want the president not to interfere in the activities of the police service, and we want people who are thinking in a tribal sense or feeling that the police service should be filled up with people from their own tribes to get out of the police force, so that the people who are promoted, who are hired, who are promoted, or who are posted to certain areas are done, that happens on merit. So the issues that are affecting the police performance, one, they are structural, in that we have all these challenges which can be legislated. Number two, we also need to understand that this issue of crime is not a new phenomena.
Right.
That we can actually come up with new structures, new systems being put into place. You see the Safaricom issue, the Safaricom tender that is being brought in to bring in digital connectivity between all police stations, whereby in fact all Kenyans should have their information in a data bank somewhere. Everybody's fingerprints should be automatically available at any one time. So that if a police officer stops you on the highway and he feels that he's suspicious about your behavior and character, all he needs to do is just tell you to put your fingerprint and it will show him whether you are actually a decent citizen or you are a criminal.
All right, let's speak to Isaac, who's calling us this morning. Isaac, good morning.
Good morning, Madam Sophie.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, say hi to Honorable Richard Onyonka.
Thank you.
And first and foremost, I'd really like to congratulate you for actually being a true union. First and foremost, is actually whatever he's trying to bring on board is issues that are really so articulative and so sensitive. And I really want to say congratulations. First and foremost is that actually the three issues that he's talking about, talk about security, talk about issues, general all issues of the referendum. I believe all those issues perhaps are not issues that Kenyans can be subjected to a referendum, because national security, as much as actually it is a threat, that is not an issue that we can subject to a referendum. Issues of IEBC, In fact, actually, that is also another issue that we cannot subject to a referendum. So basically, to one message to Honorable Richard Onyonka, being now called, being the sponsor of actually the referendum, why should he not take that opportunity and make an in-house meeting, convene CORD, out of which ODM is his party, tell them actually all these issues that he's trying to bring on board? Because I believe if he can be articulative, if actually he can be so eloquent and charismatic as he is now, I think actually he has won many Kenyans and convinced them that there is no need for a referendum. So why should he not actually convince his party that there is no need for a referendum because of all those issues that he's trying to bring on board? And again, has he really ever taken that opportunity to convince his party what he's trying to convince Kenyans?
Okay. All right, Isaac, I will put that to him and he's heard it. Thank you so much for calling in. George, you're online as well. Good morning.
Morning, madam.
Good morning.
Morning to you.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, first I want to thank Honorable Onyonka. Secondly, I want to take on this referendum appeal.
Yes.
One, we have to agree that ODM had their election just the other day. And I could see Raila in front of people whom he knows. He could not even manage 3,000 people in a small room. And then here we have Isaac Hassan doing it for 14 million people in Kenya, and gets out successfully without kits and packets being dismantled. Madam, we have to be very realistic. IPC did a good job. Let ODM take their own take. Two, as regards money to the governors, if they are unable to be audited for as rich as 200 million shillings, how can we entrust them with those billions they are asking for? They don't even want to attend to senators who are calling on them to be asked on some questions. Let it be very slow, progressively, and then open us a problem with an increment. Even in the US, the states don't get more than or the same as the national government.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much for watching and your contribution this morning. I don't know, Director, should we go and break first, or do we first respond to the issues raised? Let's respond at least of them before we go on break, and we'll return to continue with the rest. Isaac talked about, again, echoing what you're saying, the issues raised are not to be subjected to a referendum, but raised a very key question. Have you, as a CORD member, and ODM more specifically, said in a meeting, raised your voice and said, you know what, this is not right, we should not be doing this?
Thank you. Actually, I have to be very honest with Isaac that when this whole exercise started, it was so fast. Everything took place so fast that we've not actually had meetings to discuss whether we should go for the referendum or not.
So this is a what, you know, when you say that, it comes across like it's just a few people going with this and saying we are all in, because if there are no meetings
basically to consult, when the meetings take place, basically what happens there is that you go there and you find a decision has already been made, and
so no consultation.
No consultation. That's why many of us are putting this in the media. That's why we are saying that honestly and sincerely. Many of us do believe, and I'm saying this, I think, for the 10th time. There are very many members on the CORD side who don't want this referendum. I can say without fear or favor that half of us on the CORD side are not for this referendum. Half of us believe that we can change things, where we can work with the Jubilee government. Those ones that will not be able to change will have the integrity to say this we have been unable to change. But we believe we can work with the Jubilee side and change the things which can be changed. Because when you're talking about IBC, even when you're talking about presidential elections, you still come down to an individual member of parliament. I want an IBC that will be free and fair to me and all my competitors. I want, when I win my elections, they are won in a dignified manner. So you can't tell me that a coded member wants an IEBC that is good, or and a Jubilee member doesn't want an IEBC that is good. So to a large extent, I think what Isaac is saying is, I am hoping, against hope, that we will be able to sit and make these points that I've been making here to our principals and tell them that I think they need to rethink the way that I was in the team, the caucus group of parliament being chaired by Mutava Musibi, where we said, can we try and go and look before the Sabasaba rally? Can we go and try and talk to the former prime minister and let us look for a way on how we can talk with President Uhuru and say, can we call a truce?
Okay. Mheshimiwa, we're going to take a short break and return and talk about more issues, including what happened to the ODM elections. No one is talking about them anymore. And also what Mudavadi had to say about the call for referendum and whether you agree with it. Okay. Don't go away. Morning Express continues shortly. Welcome back to Morning Express. It is 8:04 a.m. We're glad you're watching the last day of July. And today we're talking to who I think, as they watch this morning, CORD members would term and describe as a rebel. Why? Because he is against all the positions that CORD has taken so far. On referendum, he's tearing apart their positions and saying, you know what, there are other alternatives and this is not the time to go to a referendum. Before we went on break, we're speaking to George, who raised two issues, which Mheshimiwa Onyonka will talk about, but a very brief comment on one before we go to the other. He talked about the county governments and more money going down to them, and his concern is even with the little that's going down, there are already issues being raised of mismanagement, that they can't handle the little. What about the much that, you know, they are hoping to get? A quick comment on that. Yeah,
it's true. Okay, I think to a large extent, one of the things I would want to say is that the expectation, like, this is a new dispensation, a new constitution, county governments, lacking structures. It would be very unfair for me to blanket and say all the governors have misused money or they are misappropriating. No, I think because of certain problems that exist structurally on the ground, because this is a new outfit that came out, there has been a problem. And many people have argued that, in fact, like I remember George was arguing, saying, we really do not need to give the governors as much money as they're asking, so that then we give them time to mature and grow onto understanding how the structures work, and so that the public can actually enjoy the benefits of devolution. But I will say that for me, the county development boards, which have been introduced in the Senate, and I really pray that the governors and the members of the county assembly will actually accept this law, the ones which the law that the president has signed to.
With the senators are the boss.
Yes. Okay, the fact that the senator is going to be the boss anyway, the Senate is the upper house. The senators are specifically in place as an arm of the National Assembly to manage county resources. Okay. So it made sense for them to go and be the chairs of these boards. But what is important, and what Kenyans may not know, is that the County Development Board, for the first time, given this financial year, that actually I believe it might even start next financial year, because now already the budgets have been passed, therefore you can't change much. But in the next budget, all the money that is going to be sent to the county government, after you have removed the wage bill, you can now sit, and if the county government, for example, has got 3 billion shillings, you take the 6 or 7 constituencies that exist in that county, and the money will be equitably distributed.
All right.
That is so important, because CDF is based on that model, so that when the money comes, you see what is happening right now. All that happens is that the governor and his members of the county assembly just decide to sit, agree amongst themselves which projects are going to come. It does not matter, and you may not necessarily know that one constituency has had an unfair share of resources, therefore, of development taking place against another one. But with the County Development Board, we will be sitting in that board, the governors, the members of parliament, the senators, and this money will now equitably be shared after you have allowed the governor to take his wage bill. And in fact, I believe there's a percentage of money which the governor will have to run his office. Okay. I don't see why anybody would disagree with such an argument.
That's okay. Yes. Let's talk about ODM. He also talked about the elections, accusing CORD and ODM in essence terms of, you know, being so tough on IEBC, and yet their own elections were bungled. Yes. When the former Prime Minister returned from, you know, the US, and he was asked about what's going on in as far as the leadership and the change and the elections is concerned, yes, he said there was a report that was prepared after the bungled elections to guide first on what happened and the way forward. Yes. As a party, what's happening?
Once again, let me go back to where the rain began to beat us as ODM. Why were we holding elections? There was no any other political party that was holding elections. So why was ODM holding elections? The truth is, if you are going to hold elections in an atmosphere whereby we have just finished our national elections, where we have just come in, and you have a lot of people who are still healing from the fact that we lost the major elections. We had not settled in, and we didn't even have a consultative arrangement. I never received an email or an SMS telling me, Mheshimiwa Onyonka, can you please avail yourself at Boma Hotel? Come, let's have a discussion as to whether we're going to hold elections or not. I just woke up one morning, I was told ODM is going to hold elections, and people had started campaigning. Now, yes, it was okay for us to hold elections, but surely people need to discuss. And to me, consensus is much more important in terms of political gain than the noise and the cantankerousness and the things which were taking place when this whole issue of the election came into be. And for me,
when you say consensus, what do you mean?
Consensus is if you take members of ODM who are interested in political parties and you sit with them and you tell them, listen, first of all, let us sit and agree on what we are going to do in terms of distribution, fairness, equity, in terms of where certain seats are going to go. That happens in politics. You do not necessarily go for the bare knuckle.
But where then is the place of democracy in that? If you're going to make those decisions, and remember, ahead of those elections, there were very many.
Democracy. The fact that you sit and agree amongst yourselves.
But the consensus you're saying in terms of deciding these ones will go here. You remember in terms of even the chairmanship, the leadership.
I wasn't saying that
going
out
Nyanza
and
was in
picking
contention.
Zani and saying Babu Namwamba is a bad guy or Richard Onyonka cannot make it is consensus. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. What I'm saying is that you can set up the parameters of going out to agree on how the elections are going to be held, whereby you reduce the animosity and the anger and the disagreement amongst the candidates, for example. I don't think this was done effectively by the party.
Why do you think that election was bungled? Who do you think was behind that? Some have... What do you think?
The men in black.
Who are the men in black? They're known to the party.
If I knew that right now, I'd have a big story.
Oh, really? You know that. And it was said they were known to the party. They were not strangers.
As far as I'm concerned, there were many people who felt that the arrangement that had been given was not going to fit into what the elections were going to be. Even right now, there are people who are asking for those elections.
Why are you Team Zani or Team Ababu?
I like them both. I wish one
who would you have voted for?
I was going to vote for Ababu.
Okay.
I think he's young. He wants to run with it. I think he can articulate issues of the party. I think he's intelligent enough, and I believe...
So are there plans to still have elections for ODM?
I hope we will. Eventually, we have to hold elections. We have to hold elections. And most probably you'll see me running for an elective office.
You know, there's
in the party.
Yes. Which one? Chairman?
I will
leader?
tell you. I'll tell you when the time comes.
You can join the...
I could even run for the party leader.
Yes, you can. Was it Simba Arati? It was Raila Odinga, and then the third name, the Richard Onyonka.
I might, and then they'll say I've been bought to fight the party leader. No, I would look for another seat. I wouldn't want to be the party leader.
But you hadn't...
I hadn't.
Before, why now do you feel you want to?
I felt that the exercise was not planned and organized well enough for me to participate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There's a story in one of the dailies today, and CORD rebels and Mudama against his governor in as far as his positions, which are very much like yours on both cases, on the rallies and now on. What do you think about the fact that they're talking about withdrawing?
Yes.
The party that sponsored the ODM could withdraw.
Yes. As far as I'm concerned, this is just a difference in opinion. This is a position many of us take because we believe that we are actually helping our side. We are helping the party. I hope that the party will not continue with the threats and the issues of telling everybody that if you don't toe the line, therefore we are going to kick you out. But if they decide to kick me out, I'll go for elections, and I believe I'll win.
So you're not worried?
I'm not worried at all.
And you're going to stay in ODM
Absolutely.
and in court?
I'm in ODM, and I'll be talking about
even if an emissary of TNA calls you and says, brother,
no,
you know we are speaking the same language.
The TNA guys are my friends, and we talk. I mean, you see, one of the things that most Kenyans don't know is that in Parliament, we are as close and as friendly as we will be until when we have our weekend funeral meetings.
Then again, the laws...
Then you'll have some guys screaming about the Jubilee side this way and ODM and CORD screaming this side.
Yeah.
But when we are in the House, there are things actually that we agree on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. When we are in Parliament, you will find that some of us, like there's an issue I'm very passionate about. I just think we need to tackle the issue of tribalism in this country.
Yes.
Because many of us we are at crossroads. I mean, you find many members of Parliament, I'll tell you, who are, for example, non-Kikuyu members, are married to Kikuyu women. Some are married to Luo women. Yeah. Some are married to Luo.
But it's when it comes to politics that you see those
we go
divisions.
Into these tribal things.
All
so
right.
It's an issue that when we're in Parliament, we discuss it. And people are saying, actually, by the way, Mheshimiwa, I think that issue, we need to look for a way to sort it.
All right, we have two callers online. I want to take their calls. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Who am I talking to?
This is Honorable Rajuai. Raja is the Speaker for Mombasa County Assembly.
All right, thanks for calling.
Yeah.
Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, I have just some few concerns for Honorable Onyonka. One is the issue he has raised about the inadequate infrastructure at the county government level. I just want to inform him that if you don't send enough cash to the county government because they are lacking infrastructure to handle such funds. In fact, I was just walking in Nithi County. I think the situation is pathetic. So if you don't send funds, when will they develop? Okay. So I think to me that argument is misplaced. The second one, the issue of 43% that has just been assented to by the president. I think the referendum is to make sure that we don't leave things to the wishes of the leadership. Because tomorrow the president can decide to even take it back to 16%. That's the same. You would have not violated any law. And for me, if we go to a referendum and put it at a fixed, that we have maybe 55% to go to county governments, that is what will save us. So we should be obeying the rule of law, not obeying what the leadership is going to say. He has raised an issue, a third issue about the MCAs flying out abroad to study non-existing issues. I mean, this to me is an insult to me. So I think he should withdraw this. Because there are no group of individuals.
But would you vouch for all MCAs across the board around the country for what it is they're going on these trips for? Because it's an issue that was raised by constitutional bodies. Whilst you can vouch for yourself, but can you do the same for everyone?
Thank you so much. This is what I want to tell you. Even some of these constitutional bodies are really confused and misleading the nation. Because I remember even in my case, they were saying my MCAs traveled abroad. A whole MCAs traveled abroad, like, some went to Rwanda, some went to South Africa. In the real sense, only a committee traveled to Rwanda. In fact, 3 traveled to South Africa. And I'm being told I sent a whole assembly abroad. So that is misleading. So I want Honorable Onyonka to be getting this facts before. Now, my last consideration is about saying police service, actually should be given time to work. Who to give this time? If you don't bring a referendum to do away with the county commissioners, the police service, the likes of IG cannot work when they have people at the county government, like county commissioners, giving statements like politicians each and every time and again. So I think let us just have issues right and allow us to have it. That the referendum, to me, I don't support anything to do with the parties, but I support a move that will bring changes in the constitution that each and every common man would enjoy. That is what I stand for.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We appreciate you for calling and watching the show this morning. We still have Dixon on the line. Dixon, good morning.
Yeah.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, I just want to tell Richard.
Yes.
He happens to be my member of parliament from Kikuchi Church. And I would like him to remind him that to read the mood in the ground. Because since he was in Kisumu on bailout, he had a case of where he was bailed on a 40 million bond. That is when he started to lean towards the Jubilee side. So I like to warn him to read this on ground, but I'm pretty sure he's very sure he will not come back to Parliament come 2017. Okay. Because the way he's just arguing right now, he has really changed since he was bailed from Kisumu. If he had a problem, maybe a financial problem, he could have asked the party to help him. Not just leaning towards to Jubilee side to get help. Now, the issues he's just raising there, they're not legitimate. Saying about the referendum that is too high, no, that's not legitimate.
Okay. Your point is made, Dixon. Thank you for calling. Many issues raised there by the Honorable, and we do not have a lot of time. Yeah, the Speaker of Mombasa.
I will run through them very quickly.
Very quickly.
I want to tell the Speaker of Mombasa that the truth is, as far as I'm concerned, if we deal with the issues of the MCAs, in fact, what the Speaker is not saying, and these are issues which have come up in the media, is that there are, even when only his committee traveled to Rwanda, there are also cases where MCAs actually didn't travel, but they were paid. All right. So when he says that it's only the committee that left, that this exercise has been abused, and I'm saying it is not only MCAs who have abused the issue of them traveling, even members of parliament. Remember when I was in foreign affairs, one of the statements I gave in parliament was that there were about 19 countries that had actually said that as far as they were concerned, they didn't even want Kenyan members of parliament to travel abroad. And recently we've
seen others, yes.
Exactly, and that has come up. So this is a matter that I think we all need to look at, and this is a matter that doesn't have to be interpreted in any other way. It's just abuse of funds and everything. The issue is saying about the county commissioners. I will tell my speaker, the reason some of us feel that you do not need to come in and bring out the issue of removing the matter of county commissioners is because before the constitution was promulgated, I did not believe that we needed chiefs and the provincial administration. My worry is even much more now that what is happening in this country, assume that you get all security organs being given to a governor, and this governor decides to secede. He decides that he's not going to be answerable to the president of Kenya, and is going to carry arms, and is going to try and
But surely there are laws to ensure that does not happen.
But sometimes when somebody is seceding, he doesn't have to go for the laws. So when you are handling the matter of security, we must be very, very sensitive as to how we handle it.
So for you, county
if there is a county commissioner who's errant, that can be dealt with differently.
Okay.
All right? Finally, Dixon came up and told me that he thinks it's because I have a case. First of all, it's a matter in court. I believe I'm innocent.
It's a case on abuse of office and tax evasion.
And tax evasion. I believe I'm innocent until proven guilty. I hope that I will win the case. I believe that I'm still innocent. And this has nothing to do with me taking these positions. I know that, as I said earlier, it has been raised in all media houses. People have been saying, oh, the reason why Onyonka is against ODM is because he wants President Uhuru Kenyatta to help him win the case. President Uhuru Kenyatta doesn't help anybody win the case. You go with the facts. If I stole the money, I will go to jail. If I didn't steal the money, I'll be innocent and I'll continue talking the way I talk. Anybody who knows my political position will understand that I take positions because of what I believe in. If somebody thinks it's because I have money problems, by the way, I don't have money problems. But if somebody thinks that it's because I have money problems, that's why I'm here, or that is why I'm saying the referendum, as far as I'm concerned, shouldn't take place, is cheating themselves. I had many money problems before I became an MP, and taking these positions has nothing to do with me not having money problems or having them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mudavadi recently on this said, quoting him, I can tell you that they are not interested, they meaning CORD, reference to CORD, are not interested in the referendum. What they want is to create a talking point in the run-up to the 2017 elections. Do you think this is all about setting the pace, gearing up, getting the numbers to their side ahead of the 2017 elections?
I think it's a possibility that that case is there, but as far as I'm concerned, 3 years is a long time. I think to start and begin talking about this issue in terms of the coming elections, as I said, I am much more comfortable for these issues to be raised, for my party to be structured, for us to organize ourselves, for us to raise the critical issues on the Jubilee government, the mistakes which the president makes. We need to criticize them, but criticize them in terms of raising the issues with the facts, or coming up with alternative suggestions which Kenyans will look at and say, I think this is a legitimate opposition and this opposition has got a good point, and I think let us listen to what the opposition is saying. If the agenda of this exercise is deliberately geared towards planning and organizing how President Uhuru is going to lose the next elections, what happens if Uhuru was to do, out of the 10 things that Kenyans want him to do, he does 8 of them? The referendum will mean nothing.
I don't want to finish this interview without asking you. There's now that we talked about IBC quite a bit, they had proposed to have the elections staggered, because for them last year was, some would call it baptism by fire, 6 elections one day, and that's one of the things they said, perhaps not all in one day. Do you think that would be a solution for them going forward?
I think for me it's a very good idea, because having voters on a list of about 34 people in a constituency, and then after that you have the presidents, and then after that you have all that stuff, I think it is important. But again, as I say, you don't need to stagger the elections through a referendum. You can actually legislate with an Elections Act, which basically, if it is given a 2/3 majority in parliament, which makes sense that we need to hold elections in a period. For me, we should hold elections in 3 days, for example, where you have elections for the members of the county assembly, where you have elections for the women rep, the MP, and maybe the senator and governor, and where you have the presidential on one day.
All right.
And we should accept best practices. There are other countries who have adopted this system. We look at it and adopt it.
That is your camera over there. Imagine Raila Odinga, Moses Wetangula, Kalonzo Musyoka, somewhere seated, having a cup of tea and watching you. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that I think they mean well for the country. I believe that there are certain issues which they have raised which are legitimate. And I believe that they want this for Kenya. I think they love Kenya. All of us love Kenya. But I believe that there is a different way we could have done this. I don't believe that having a referendum is the only way out on how to solve the problems of this country. If they were willing for us to renegotiate and agree on what needs to be done, so be it. If not, then we could actually wait for this referendum question to come in the next elections, so that by the time we are going for the elections, then these questions can be asked with everybody else when the elections are taken, because that's what takes place in other countries, so that whatever that is going to come out of that will now be adopted and implemented coming during the next, I think it will be the 12th parliament.
But meanwhile, you're in ODM to stay.
I'm here to stay unless they kick me out.
Unless they kick you out. Richard Onyonka, Kitutu Churches South Member of Parliament, thank you for being part of our show this morning. A lot of feedback. Many people have given their views online on Twitter. Can I read those before we go on break? I don't know, Onyonka is a tax evader. Talk about a big frying itself.
Yes.
Kudos to the Honorable for realistic discourse of the current political scenario. Douglas Regis says, why oppose a pro-devolution referendum? Uhuru Kenyatta should lead from the front. Abel says, thumbs up for bringing a sober mind, non-partisan guests. Great discussion. Fact, politics is our enemy. At Simb says, Honorable Onyonka, people feel frustrated in National Assembly. It's rogue proceedings, Kenyans dying, leadership lacking here. Mutua says, Onyonka is not being a rebel, but a realist. It's time CORD stopped the bickering politics for the best of Kenyans. We have Balaka says, I think Honorable Onyonka is not being sincere. CORD is raising issues affecting us, wananchi. He should try doing this in the National Assembly. Parliament, Richard says, has the opposition, and every political party should have an Honorable Richard Onyonka to keep them in check. Douglas Arege, you say, lend us an idea how he runs his CDF. He lacks the moral authority to talk about issues in CORD. Victor Correll, this Richard guy should not be labeled as a rebel, but a realist. Code principles are just bullies.
About my CDF, that's why I'm number 1 in Kisii, number 1 in Nyanza, and I was number 7 in Kenya last year.
Number 1.
Number 1 in Kisii. You should see my project. Arege works for the governor of Kisii County.
Okay.
He knows that.
He knows that.
Yes.
Enoch Onchwari says, thank you, Onyonka. In fact, it takes one courage to do what you're doing. He's from UON. He says, Rabadandis says, it's not creed. If this Code MP, Code Rebel, has such confidence, let him resign and seek re-election.
I am ready to do that if I had a need to.
There's a need. The people, the camp you're in, you disagree with them from A to Z.
I'm disagreeing with ODM on principle. It has nothing to do with me saying the party can't do what they're doing. Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Make Sami Mbambe. Is Onyonka new in that 11th parliament? He argues like someone who has just landed from Siberia. Why would they say that?
Up to him.
Give Kenyans time. Give Kenyan governors time to govern or make their mistake, as he rightly asks for Jubilee.
Exactly. That's what we've done.
Yes. Momanyi says Richard is very articulate on issues soberly. Onyonka should realize you are yourself, not for Jubilee. Oh yeah, Code should realize you're speaking for yourself, not for Jubilee.
Yes, absolutely.
And many
Thank
more.
you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
very much.
We
It's a
appreciate
pleasure.
you being with us.
I'm ready to be here. I'll come back again.
Okay.
Thank
And
you.
we are going to take a short break right here on Morning Express. It is about 8:30 a.m. When we return, you'll meet a great young man with a heart of gold doing amazing things in this country. Perhaps one that all of us should borrow a leaf from. Do stay with us.